Hi, you're watching Hindustan Times Insight. I'm Aditi Prasad, and with me today is the paper's editor-in-chief, Sukumar Ranganathan again. Today we're going to talk about what the Prime Minister very recently described as the revari culture in the Indian politics, and he was, of course, cautioning people against the revari culture. Now, as we speak, the matter is with the Supreme Court, where a ban is being sought on announcements of freebies by political parties, and the court has just ruled. So let me just ask Sukumar straight away, what has the court said now? What's going to be different from what they said 2 days ago?
I'm not going to get into whether the court should have looked into it or not, right? I mean, there is a big debate that's on, and we have a view as a newsroom on freebies. But what the court has done just this morning, that's Friday morning, in case you're watching it on some other day of the week, was to send a 2013 case regarding freebies. But actually, it's the new case.
Yeah.
This is a PIL. Send this case to a 3-judge bench so that a 2013 judgment by the Apex Court on freebies can be looked at. And what was the 2013 judgment? The 2013 judgment was on things that were being given out to people, perhaps in return for votes, right? So election is going to happen, a party goes to the public and says, vote for us. If we come back to power, we will give you color televisions, we will give you laptops, we will give you mixies, we will give you grinders. And this was a case that the Supreme Court heard in 2013. Okay. And the Supreme Court said that things such as these, freebies such as these, the act of giving them to the public was part of directive principles guiding a state's policy, which effectively meant this is what governments do. So don't get into it. And that is what has governed jurisprudence since. So when this PIL on freebies came up, and the court, of course, went through this elaborate process of saying, should we have an expert panel, should we not have an expert panel, and everything else. Everything that was happening in the backdrop of this 2013 judgment.
Okay.
Now, a 3-judge bench will look at the PIL and probably come up with a view which is different from what that judgment came up with.
Fair enough. And I am going to come. You pointed out that as a newsroom we have a view on it, and I'd like our viewers to know that view also. But before that, I just want to just come to a little bit about the RBI. In a report that they had released recently, they also mentioned that how the freebies are being offered by state governments are, sort of harming the exchequers of the state governments, respective state governments. That's one. Then there is, I started with Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking about a revari culture. Is this issue an economic issue, a political issue, a moral issue? What kind of an issue is it?
Good question. At this point in time, it is purely a political issue. And it is purely a political issue for 2 reasons. One, anything that the BJP takes up is actually a political issue, right? I mean, I don't think other issues really figured as prominently the way the party looks at it. And it is clearly a political issue. But you have to, I think you need to define this entire debate the way it needs to be defined, right? And part of it is a definition that arises in nomenclature. What's a freebie? What's not a freebie? Do you have productive freebies? Do you have non-productive freebies? And things like that.
And what's welfare versus freebies?
Yeah, correct. And the second part is to look at it in the entire backdrop of fiscal federalism. So let's understand that. Part of it is politics, but a lot of it is center-state relations, fiscal federalism. We know that every time there is an election in a state,
right,
one of the BJP's talking points is its double-engine government. It speaks of same government in the center, same government in the state, you will get benefits of development, etc., etc., etc. So there is a lot of focus on that. So the state government or the state BJP pretty much piggybacks on what the center is doing. So BJP-ruled states do not have this problem. And what is this problem that we are talking about? The problem we are talking about is the fact that we have a list which is a list of subjects that the union is supposed to look at, list of subjects that the state is supposed to look at, the union government, the state governments are supposed to look at, and list of subjects which are in the concurrent list. And a lot of the welfare schemes that the government has launched are either on subjects which are in the concurrent list, and some of them are actually even things that are there in the state list. Right? And the fact that these are central welfare schemes is leveraged very, very effectively, and there's no harm in doing it, because this is what parties are supposed to do. Is one, the delivery is excellent, because we know that this government is great in delivering welfare schemes, much better than any of the previous schemes. I think the leakage has come down, the efficiency is quite high. So the benefits of that are being leveraged by the party for electoral returns, right? Which is fine. I mean, now the states would obviously like to counter this. For the BJP states, it's no problem because it's double engine. But the states where you have regional opposition parties, local opposition parties, they would want to, if they come to power, do their own welfare schemes and get the benefits of this, which is great so far. But you need money to do that. Now, the minute the debate comes to this stage, I think the counter that usually comes is there is a divisible pool of taxes, and thanks to fairly progressive devolution rules that have been put in place by the Finance Commission, state governments get 41%. I think it used to be 42%, but after J&K stopped being a state, it became 41%, which is a lot. Except that a lot of revenue, or at least not a lot, is a certain proportion of the revenue doesn't go into the divisible pool.
Okay.
Right? Special excise taxes and cesses on fuel, for instance. And I know that fuel was a big talking point between the center and the states.
True.
Actually does not go into this. It goes purely to the center. So what is the effective amount that is transferred to the states? It's much lower than 41%. Calculations done by some states show that it's closer to 20%. But, it is not 41%. So the states feel that they have been unfairly done by,
shortchanged in this whole,
especially because with GST, and GST is we believe as a newsroom that it is fundamentally reformist in its nature. I think a lot of the issues with GST were the fact that we didn't have a rational tax structure, but that's been rationalized now. I think this guaranteed return that was promised to the states on the basis of a 14% growth was just far too high. It shouldn't have been at that level. So all those issues have been sorted out now because the compensation period is over. And I think the states are also now open to rationalizing this, but that's a different issue. But by signing on to GST, the states have the states have given up their right to tax anything other than fuel and liquor.
Right.
So they have no other ways of generating revenue. So the states are upset, saying that, listen, we are not able to offer freebies. You guys are offering benefits, right? And here we get into definitional issues, which is really splitting hairs. What is a freebie? What's not a freebie? Is a free laptop a freebie? Is food is dry ration given to poor families a freebie? So, what are you going to define as a freebie? What are you going to define as welfare? What are you going to define as a subsidy?
And it pretty much, apart from the broad structures, a lot of what is part of the Indian culture right from the very beginning, which is parties having their manifestos, going to the public with, okay, this is what I'm going to do once I come into power. I mean, apart from broad strokes, they also offer a lot of these freebies as a part of that manifesto. And there are a lot of people who perhaps may be voting for that party or not voting.
Let's look at it.
What's the correlation?
Correct.
Yes.
It's a free laptop. I mean, it's a laptop a freebie. If you're giving it to students, and the students, it's going to help them. It's going to help them learn. It's going to help them get a job. It's eventually going to be extremely productive even from the economic point of view. But are you going to define it as a freebie? Are you not going to define it as a freebie? So, a very sticky issue. I'm not sure the court should have even got into it. But I think the debate needs to be understood from the perspective of nomenclature, but more importantly, from the perspective of fiscal federalism. Because the states are saying, listen, you are not giving us our fair share of revenue. That's the bottom line of all this. And that's the argument that the states are making.
Right. And do you see going forward this? I mean, if the court does rule one way or the other, do you see this case or this issue of freebies going forward causing more center-state tussle, and especially more reasons for political parties to drag each other to the court at the drop of a hat?
I would think so. And I think it would, because the fiscal federalism compact is fraying. Some would say it's broken, but I think it's fraying. We all saw the kind of outrage with which the GST moved to tax unpackaged food below a certain quantity, right? I mean, and it really created a controversy. Some of the states said, we are not going to tax, this is not fair. So it's fraying. And I think this whole freebie debate, because it is political at the end of the day. It's sure, economics lies at the basis of, at the bottom of it, but it is political. And I don't think we should ignore the fact that it comes just before the Gujarat election, where the BJP will most likely win, but AAP, based on present momentum, seems likely to become the second party ahead of the Congress, right? I mean, we're still some time away, but that's what it looks like at this point in time. And AAP's big play, every state they've gone to, has been freebies, free power, free water,
yeah.
Right? What is our view as a newsroom? You asked this question. We believe that there are freebies and there are freebies, right? So there are productive freebies, there are non-productive freebies. And there is collateral damage that is caused by some freebies. Things like laptops, we actually have no issues with, right? I mean, you're giving it to school kids. Even if the laptops are of poor quality, they at least have something to play around with. They will learn, right? Some of them may just watch random nonsense on it, but others will learn.
Right.
And I think it's great from that perspective. But things like power and water, as the fact that you've given them free for eons, because you know what has happened with power and water as far as farmers are concerned across this country. You've given it to them for free, as it encouraged an irresponsibility in usage. Punjab's low groundwater table, to what extent has it been caused by this? I mean, there are other things that have caused this, but then look at the collateral damage. Punjab's low groundwater table means that the state regulates the release of water, crunching certain crop cycles, making people burn crops, right? Resulting in bad air. So, so there are freebies that have caused significant environmental damage, that have made people irresponsible. And there are productive freebies. So, I think broadly speaking, anything related to health and education is fine. Other things, you will have to look at it very, very closely.
How do you see this playing out? And that's my last question to you. In Supreme Court going forward, there's a 3-judge bench. I know you're not clairvoyant, and I am not asking you to second guess what the court is doing, but judicial intervention in a thing of this nature, how do you think that's going to play out going forward?
I don't think this is going to be a case that's going to be heard in a hurry, right? I mean, and there are cases that the Supreme Court doesn't hear for a long time. So this is eventually a matter for a constitution bench. But I, quite honestly, I think this is an area that the court should not get into at all. I think this is much more of a politico-economic issue that is decided by governments sitting together. What is the resolution? The courts are not going to be resolved this. I think we have to strengthen the fiscal federalism compact between the center and the states. They have to start trusting each other. There has to be a belief that share of revenue is equitable. There has to be a belief that everything is not being driven by political motives. There has to be that trust. And we've all seen that the trust has been fraying. So I think that is the solution. The court is not going to be able to come to arrive at a solution on this.
Rebuilding of the trust between the center and the state is possibly the answer to these freebies. That's what this newsroom believes. And going forward, let's see how this plays out in the Supreme Court. But thanks for watching, and I hope we've been able to shed a little more light on this entire issue for our viewers. Stay tuned. Keep watching Hindustan Times.